My name is Dr. Grace Telesco. My name is Dr. Grace Telesco. My name is Dr. Grace Telesco. I'm joined by Dr. Teresa Lily White, Dr. Lenore Walker, Mr. Ed Denzel. Investigation with Dr. T is something that actually was the brainchild of our dean, Dr. Durham. And now, coming up this next season, we're going to be doing it almost weekly, a weekly show on a Thursday night. So lots of really cool guests. It's not just police topics, it's not just corrections topics, but it's topics that are affecting us in kind of all areas. But one of the things that we hope to get across is raising awareness, educating about some of these really important topics like human trafficking, topics like disasters. We did a show, Confessions of a Serial Killer. So for this upcoming season, we've got a couple of really cool things. We're going to have a day in the life of a DEA agent. Another really cool one, which is really close to my heart, is going to be on September 11th. Because not only do we want to talk about 9/11 and the work of the NYPD, but I also want to really look at the mental health outcomes. You know, we also have the human trafficking panel. We are going to bring back our Brevard Sheriff, Sheriff Wayne Ivey. It's always a pleasure to have him on. We're going to have Unfound again, Ed Denzel. He'll be coming back a few times, and that's going to be really exciting and interesting too. So welcome, everybody. Again, Dr. Grace Telesco, Associate Professor in the School of Criminal Justice here at Nova Southeastern University and the Abraham Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice. And I'm joined tonight by all of our students. I notice in the webinar. Thank you. Thank you for your attendance. Appreciate that. And also several folks that are logged in to the YouTube channel. And so we have, yes, Investigation with Dr. T is pretty much every single week. Pretty much, we try to bring you some really interesting guests, and we try to talk about interesting topics as well. Tonight is a really special one. I have my guest, very special guest, is Dr. Sean Lawler, and he is a supervisory special agent with the United States Drug Enforcement Administration, also known as the DEA, which is why we've titled tonight, A Day in the Life of a DEA Agent. And so Supervisory Special Agent Lawler has conducted international narcotics investigations in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area, currently assigned as a DEA Aviation Division's training officer, chief instructor pilot. Sean Lawler earned his Doctor of Management degree from Colorado Technical University, where he concentrated in Homeland Security studies. And now listen to this, listen to his doctoral research. It focused on methods by which school administrators may disrupt an active shooter event or terrorist attack upon an American school. And so, Sean, I know that we're going to talk today about a day in the life of a DEA agent. You're going to talk to us all about this really interesting and exciting job that you do, this career of yours, what you've been involved in, what does it take to become a DEA agent. Many of our students are probably really super interested in that. You're going to tell them all about the requirements, and you can tell them about some of the benefits. I think you also mentioned to me earlier before the show that you were going to do that. So I'm really looking forward to it. So Sean, please share your camera with us now. And I know you have some visuals, so you can share your screen with us as well. But for now, did I lose him? Where is he? Sean, did I lose you?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I gotcha. Yep. So
Okay.
all you gotta do is share your video with us. There he is. Okay. Well, we see your visuals, but I want to see you too.
Mine is delayed a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Yes. There we go. There we go.
So we want to see you though right now before unless you're in the witness protection program, which I don't think you are.
You can't see me?
No,
Because I can
nope,
see myself.
nope. No, your video's off.
Right. No, I can see myself and I can hear you. I just,
Layla, can you see him?
Yes.
Oh, there he is. Okay, I gotcha. Excellent. All right, I'm going to add the spotlight this way. Our viewers on live stream can see it as well. So, everybody, this is Sean Lawler. I read his bio. I actually had to cut his bio short because it's very, very long. But Sean, what I wanted to say is I am so super psyched to maybe ask you to come back another time and talk about your doctoral research, because we do a lot of active shooter training across our campus, and it's kind of right up our alley. And we'd love to hear about what you found and what your research has revealed to you. Okay, that'll be down the road. Layla will be in touch with you.
okay.
Okay, all right, cool. So take it away, Sean. It's all you, and we're going to keep your video spotlighted. Go ahead.
Okay. One more technical issue. I'm hearing it's like a big delay.
We're not hearing that. Layla, are you hearing a delay?
No, I'm not.
No, it might
No?
be on
Okay.
your end. I know that's distracting. I apologize, but it's not coming across to us, and it's not coming across to our guests either.
Okay. Any suggestion, Layla? A quick fix?
Well, I would say you go to your audio settings,
Okay.
and just like check and make sure that your speaker is the same as your system.
It's not,
Because before we went live, you weren't having that problem, right?
yeah. Okay. No, it wasn't.
Well, we may just have to march through it now.
Okay. All
Okay,
right.
because we're live streaming, and here we are. So
Gotcha.
as soon as
Okay.
you start sharing that slide, maybe while you're talking, if you want to, my suggestion might be for you to lower your speaker so you're not hearing yourself.
Gotcha.
I don't know. That's just an idea. I don't know if
Okay.
that's where you're hearing it, but it's all you now. It's all you, Sean. Take it away.
Okay. All right. So my name is Sean Lawler. I'm a supervisor special agent, as Dr. Telesco mentioned, with the DEA. I've been DEA agent for almost 18 years now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a DEA agent, and then kind of my experiences that I've had, as well as the other types of things that DEA does. So I started out at the U.S. Air Force Academy. My father was a DEA agent, so I knew I always wanted to do that as well. And so I kind of got my background in counterterrorism and national security at the Air Force Academy. When I graduated from the Air Force Academy, I really wanted to go to pilot training, but at the time they had too many pilots. And so I had to go into the field of intelligence for a little while. So I did human intelligence and combat interrogation, which actually was very beneficial because those career fields enabled me to be well qualified for DEA and the types of things that we do for DEA. So I spent 12 years active duty with the Air Force and then joined the DEA down in Pensacola. Um, for background of what DEA is we are worldwide. Everywhere that we've got an embassy, we probably have a DEA presence. Some countries like Colombia have a large number of agents, and other smaller countries may only have one or two. But we're in all major cities across the United States, as you can see here. Some of the divisions that are very large that typically work international, large international trafficking cases would be like the New York division, Miami division, Dallas, and Los Angeles. So when people think of DEA, they often think of being a special agent. There's about, I think we have max numbers for around 5,000. So we're about at least half the size of the FBI in terms of special agents. But there's many other careers besides special agent. We have diversion investigators who investigate crimes against individuals that are diverting legitimate pharmaceuticals for other reasons. We have forensic chemists because all of our drugs that we seize will be tested by the laboratory to determine exactly what they are, determine the chemical structure, and then that will also go to trial. So they may have to testify that the drugs that we've seized are in fact what we said they are. They also have intelligence research specialists that work very closely with each of the special agent groups, helping us put together organizational charts and all types of research that we have to do on the bad guys. Maximum age to become a special agent is 37 because we have a mandatory retirement age of 57. So due to a 20-year career, you can't be older than 37 when you join. But they've recently made exceptions that will give waivers to military veterans. So you can be over the age of 37 and receive a waiver for the age. So there's a lot of other specialties. The primary job of the special agent is to investigate the nation's narcotics laws. But we have a lot of additional duties that we perform. And some of these I do. Like I'm a firearms instructor. I'm also a tactics instructor. And tactics involves doing things like felony stops on a highway, stopping vehicles, clearing rooms, properly executing warrants and raids on houses and different types of floor plans. So we teach all that. DEA also has a very robust emergency medical technician program, as do a lot of law enforcement agencies. Civilian EMTs will not come into a scene until the scene is totally clear. And often that can take a long time for law enforcement to deem it clear. So in that time, there can be a lot of injury and death results. So a lot of law enforcement agencies now train up medics that are right there in the stack when you go in. And so if somebody does get injured, then you just change hats and you go from agent to medic. So it's a very robust program that I'm a part of. All of our pilots are special agents. And so that's the role that I'm in now. We have both fixed wing and rotary wing pilots. And we have both single engine aircraft and we have multi-engine aircraft, as well as single engine helicopters and multi-engine helicopters. We also have boat operators because we use boats for certain things, special missions. We have special response teams, which are the equivalent of a SWAT team that you'd see on the local level. We used to have teams that would do a lot of investigative work overseas, particularly in Afghanistan and down in South and Central America. And we disbanded that program and then stood up basically the SWAT program. And so most of the divisions throughout the nation will have these special response teams. And those operators are trained to a very high level of tactics. We'll use them if we've got a particularly dangerous warrant that we have to serve, barricaded subjects, things like that. DEA also trains and certifies agents in clandestine laboratory investigations. So, for example, if there is a house that is producing methamphetamine, that whole area becomes a hazmat area, and so you have to go in with the proper hazmat gear. So they train how to safely do that in the gear, and also to be able to fight and act as agents wearing all that gear. DEA is involved with a lot of undercover operations. So every DEA agent is trained to do undercover ops. And we also have polygraphers. That's mainly part of the application process, but those are all DEA agents that get trained in doing that. Typical duties that we do on a daily basis. I started out my career, got hired on in Florida, in Pensacola. And then my first assignment was to the New Jersey division. And so I was on a task force with, it was about 3 agents and then 6 or 7 local police officers that were detailed to us. So they were deputized as federal task force officers. And on a daily basis, we spent most of our time conducting surveillance. We would have a particular target that we were investigating. And so much of our day would be spent conducting surveillance on that individual and then determining who is coming to meet with that individual, observing crimes that were being committed. And that's how you can identify all the other individuals that were part of a criminal enterprise. You can identify locations that they're using, vehicles that they're using, and we're gathering evidence. So much of what we do on a daily basis is conducting surveillance. So we're living out of our vehicles, sometimes very early in the morning before people are awake, and until till late at night. But we do a lot of research. We're doing a lot of database research, putting together details on individuals. If we identify somebody new, we want to find out everything we can about them, to include financial records. So we have access to those types of things, which are very useful in putting together a case, and just learning as much as we can about them. Of course, there's a lot of report writing involved. As you're learning in your criminal justice program, that's a large part of police work. Everything that you witness has to be documented in very great detail and recorded. We do a lot of interviewing and then interrogation too, interviewing a lot of different people at different levels as part of the investigation. And then after we make arrests, it will shift from interview to interrogation. Some of the other things that we do are expected to do or trained up on a daily basis. We serve arrest warrants and search warrants. These are where we develop enough evidence and we develop probable cause, as you all are familiar with. And we will have the complaint taken to a magistrate. The magistrate will sign it. And then that's our legal warrant to make the arrest of a particular individual. So we do that quite a bit. Title III investigations also require the signature of a judge to sign off on it because they're very intrusive. But to be able to, if we develop enough evidence, enough probable cause, then we can tap into organizations' telephones and record those conversations. Evidence handling, everything, we have to know how to safely and properly handle evidence. And then, of course, we're required to testify in court as to what we've seen. Most DA cases don't go to court, only about 3%, because our evidence that we gather is airtight. So usually the bad guys, after arrest, end up working with us because they know that's the one way to shorten their sentence. As I said, we've got special response teams, fast teams that used to work overseas, and then the SWAT teams that work here domestically. So to give you an idea of what I was doing a day in my life up in New Jersey, typically would start a little bit later, around 10 o'clock, because often we'd be working later hours. And so we would miss the morning rush, driving up to Newark, New Jersey, or New York City. Many of our cases took us over to New York City. And so we would start around 10 o'clock, and then sometimes we would go to the office, but often we would go straight to whatever neighborhood we were conducting surveillance in. We would just go straight there. And you might spend days there watching the same house. So there's a lot of excitement, but there's also a lot of downtime and a lot of boredom, just sitting and watching a door. So that's the less exciting part, but that's a very necessary part of police work, because you need to be able to put together an entire pattern and identify all the different individuals that may be showing up there. A lot of the information I have on here is straight from the DEA website. So it's filled with all of the information that I'll be covering, as well as other resources. What DEA does is, as a whole, we have a single mission of investigating the nation's narcotics laws. So we operate under Title 21 of the United States Code. And we have other crimes that we investigate, but the central nexus has to be drugs. So that's our overall mission. Also have core values that we have to follow, and these are very important to us, and very important for the public to know that we are held to very high standards. We are bound by the rule of law, and we take it as a great responsibility to protect the civil rights of Americans, which many nations around the world do not have. The national police, the federal police forces, operate outside the rule of law, but that's something that makes America very different. So when people think of DEA, they often think of the position of special agent, and so to find out how to apply to become a DEA agent, all of that is online on the DEA website. These are the basic requirements. You have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to successfully pass a DEA drug test. And they've actually made some exceptions because we understand that there might be well-qualified individuals that have made some mistakes in the past, maybe if they were younger. And so DEA actually makes some exceptions for that on a case-by-case basis. You have to pass a background investigation because we have top secret security clearances. So they'll do a very thorough background check, talking to any employers you've had previously. They do criminal record checks. They talk to neighbors that you've had. They want to make sure that you don't have anything in your background that could be used against you, especially for like blackmailing material, that sort of thing. So I mentioned briefly the drug use policy. People often think that if they've ever tried an illegal substance in the past, that they're permanently barred from federal employment. And that's not true. What is very important, though, is when you take the polygraph examination that you're very upfront about any previous drug use, because if you're not, it'll show deception, and then you'll fail the polygraph, and then won't be hired. So the as you can see there towards the bottom, marijuana is the common one. So if it's been at least 3 years since the use of any form of marijuana, then you're eligible. And then any other type of illegal drug aside from marijuana has to be at least 10 years in the past. So the process for applying to become a special agent, you go straight to the DEA.gov website, and there will be a button where you can click to contact your recruiter, and every division will have a recruiter. So you're going to speak with the recruiter that's closest to your location. But it consists of a panel interview with other agents. There's a written test that's part of it. You have to undergo the polygraph. There's a medical examination, physical fitness test, and then a psychological assessment. The physical fitness test is the one part of the whole application where you actually have the answers in advance. We're actually having a lot of failures with new applicants in the physical fitness test and also the polygraph. But for the physical fitness test, that's one, like I said, you know exactly what to expect. So that's one you can train for ahead of time. This consists of 4 elements: sit-ups, push-ups, 300-meter sprint, and the 1.5-mile run. So this is the type of thing that you can practice well in advance. If you get accepted for employment, now what they do is they offer you a choice of locations, and then you rank order those that you want. So when you're offered the spot as an employee, they're also offering you a particular location. So you'll know in advance before you even start training where you're going to go if you graduate. DEA Academy is located on the grounds of U.S. Marine Corps Base Quantico in Virginia. We're co-located with the FBI Academy. We have our own facility, but the FBI Academy is right across the street. And we share some of the same facilities. We share tracks. We also have one of the primary things that we share is called Hogan's Alley. So I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's really kind of a little mock city. It has a working Subway restaurant where employees go for lunchtime, but it has a fake hotel. It has a used car lot. It has apartments. And so we use these, and it has many streets. And so we use that to practice surveillance in a controlled environment on base so that there's no outside, public citizens able to witness any of it. And we practice actually conducting raids on these apartments. We also have 3 houses that have all 3 different floor plans. And we practice extensively during practical exercises on conducting raids on these houses. But the DEA Academy, as you can see, it's a modern facility with modern dorm rooms. Cafeteria is there, all the classrooms. So really, most of everything that you need is right there in that building. The only other things you get bused to would be going to the range every other day for firearms training or the tactics when we go to Hogan's Alley. So it's 20 weeks in the DEA Academy. You have a lot of classroom instruction, 150 hours of firearms training. So you'll shoot approximately 10,000 rounds while you're there. They really make you an expert in the pistol, but also extensive training in the long gun. We no longer carry the shotgun. You'll get familiarization training on shotguns, but DEA agents no longer carry shotguns. It's just the rifle and the pistol. 150 hours of tactical instruction, a lot of legal instruction, which is very important for obvious reasons. And then a lot of time is spent on practical applications, which is basically a scenario. Some of the scenarios are force on force. So we spend a lot of time training to win gunfights. And this is something that law enforcement agencies in the military have really evolved in. In the past, they used to use miles gear, laser, and we're really training soldiers and agents to die, because if your laser hit your vest and went off, you were pulled out of the fight. And just because somebody is shot doesn't mean you're out of the fight. You're not out of the fight until it's game over for you. So switching now to doing force on force training with simulated munitions, we're training agents to be able to fight through, even though they're getting shot with simulated munitions, they're continuing to fight through that to neutralize the threat when deadly force is authorized. We also have several sections of classroom where we can actually change. There are shoot houses where we can use simunitions in there, but we can change the floor plan. So it can be different every single time. So you don't get used to one particular floor plan. We have a lot of practical exercises at the academy. We learn how to conduct surveillance. We have a lot of cars that are just there at the academy for that use. And we do the surveillance in downtown areas around the academy. So it's off base. So you're learning how to do actual surveillance operations around civilians. We learn and practice interview and interrogation, how to handle confidential sources. That's a large part of our job. If we make an arrest and that individual is able to start working with us early on before anybody knows that person's been arrested, then they can really help us advance the case, and they can reduce their time that they're facing in jail. So, but there's a lot that goes into properly handling a confidential source to make sure that we're doing it legally and properly, and then learning how to properly handle the evidence. Another thing that we do, it's not just the enforcement side. We're also heavily involved with the public awareness of drugs. So we'll go and talk to schools about drug awareness. And we started the Red Ribbon. We actually finished this last week in October, so we just finished it a couple of weeks ago. But we started this to honor the memory of Enrique Kiki Camarena, who was a special agent he was murdered down in Mexico in the mid-'80s. And so in his honor, we started doing this Red Ribbon Week campaign. And so what we've done is we've really tried to bring it to like the elementary schools. And trying to reach the children at the earliest possible age, just start talking to them about the dangers of drugs. Here I'm in the aviation division in Fort Worth. It's our aviation division headquarters. This is our Dallas 407 helicopter. And so typically that last week in October, we'll fly around from school to school to school for about 10 days and visiting these kids. And that's something that these children are going to remember for the rest of their lives. And it's planting a seed for public service. So a lot of these kids, because they're so excited about having the helicopter come in, they'll want to one day become a police officer or fireman or an EMT or something like that. One of the big thrusts of DEA right now that most people had never heard of fentanyl before, but now the whole country has, because we're creeping towards over 100,000 overdoses of fentanyl every year. So we've started the One Pill Can Kill campaign. There's a lot of information on the DEA website for that. It's because we've had so many overdoses. Much of it is illicit fentanyl that's coming in from China, which is actually being addressed this week, talking about that. But the illicit fentanyl comes from China. floods in through Mexico, or it's mailed directly here and it's made in pill presses in people's basements and then it gets shipped out through the dark web. But the risk is that kids may think they're taking something like a Percocet pill and it has a lethal dose of fentanyl. And the DEA laboratories recently said that it's as high as 70% of the illicit pills that are coming in have a lethal dose of fentanyl. So 70%. So if anybody takes an illicit pill from a pill press, there's a high likelihood that they're not going to wake up from that. The reason they're moving towards fentanyl because it's so cheap. It's so cheap to make and it's very, very potent. It's very expensive to produce a kilogram of cocaine. I mean, it's from a live plant, so you have to grow it, you have to process it in these laboratories that are really makeshift out in the jungle. So it has a lot of different steps you have to go through. Then you got to transport it. So it's very expensive to create each kilogram of something like cocaine, or heroin, any other drug. But fentanyl is so cheap, and you can add a very, very small amount of fentanyl to a small amount of the other drug and achieve the same dosage, the same effect. So it's all just a business decision for them. It's just about making more money, and they don't care how many innocent people die from taking it. And fentanyl was actually its main use as a powerful analgesic in the hospital setting, for surgeries, for victims and the people that come into the ER, end of life cancer patients. So it's a very, very good drug when it's made through a pharmaceutical company here in the United States and then is prescribed. Probably heard of Narcan. That's the trade name for naloxone. This is actually one of the older applicators. We've now got a new one that looks almost like a little Afrin spray bottle. It's so much easier to use, but now you can get it over the counter. And this set was about $250 per little case just a couple of years ago. And now you can get over the counter for $50. Great thing about Narcan is that I could administer it to any one of you right now and there'd be no negative side effects. So there's no risk of applying it. But what it does is it will actually embed in the opioid receptors in the brain. And so the fentanyl or the opioid molecules are still there, but they can't get into the brain. And so that's the beauty of naloxone. And so every police officer, every EMT, paramedic with the fire departments, every agent, everybody's carrying this now. And it's mainly to protect ourselves because we're seeing fentanyl powder mixed in with every other drug. So in the past, we might think we're just going into a location that's just processing cocaine or heroin. There's not really a high risk of exposure. We're very carefully wear gloves, but even if it was an accidental exposure, you're probably not going to die from it. But not so with fentanyl. You can very easily die from that. What it does is it basically causes the brain to tell the lungs to stop breathing. And so individuals go into respiratory arrest. So you can die very quickly. So that's why it's so important for everyone to carry these. We're finding it in every other drug, including in vape cartridges, which is dangerous not just with a chance of fentanyl, but because vaping can often just destroy your lungs. I know one individual who was a young athletic male and saw him in an interview, and I think he was 19 years old, and in less than a year of vaping required a double lung transplant. Seeing it mixed in with marijuana as well. And I always like to mention marijuana, even though I never worked marijuana cases when I was in New Jersey, New York. We just didn't have the resources. Most of our cases focused on high volume cocaine traffickers and heroin. But I have come to the belief that this might be one of the most dangerous drugs out there. And that might surprise you to hear that. But there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that there's a general prevalent attitude that it's really not that dangerous. It's just weed. But I think a lot of people, especially older individuals, are thinking of the weed of the 60s and the 70s, which was very weak. Maybe 0.5% THC, which was the active, psychoactive ingredient. Today, you might see concentrations as high as 25%. And so what they're seeing now, we're seeing more research that's directly linking this high content THC marijuana with brain disease, which scares me. That's why I think it's the most dangerous, because especially at younger ages, kids that are consuming high amounts of high potent marijuana, it's directly being linked to psychosis, depression, and even schizophrenia. So it's dose dependent, but it's not worth the risk. And it's also still illegal in all 50 states. It's still on the Controlled Substances Act, so it's still against federal law. And so I believe, and I'm surprised that it hasn't happened yet, but this really has to go to the Supreme Court for adjudication, because you can't have states saying it's legal and federal law saying it's illegal. You, you know, that's schizophrenic in itself. So it really is going to have to go to the Supreme Court, I believe, to get adjudicated. So after I was recruited to come to the aviation division when I was up in New Jersey, because we had an opening for a Learjet 60 pilot, and they knew my background in the Air Force. I flew KC-10s for a while, which is a DC-10 air refueler, a tanker. And so we just don't have a lot of people with that background. And so that's why they asked me to consider coming to Fort Worth for the aviation division. So it wasn't this particular airplane, but it was this model that I flew when I first arrived in Fort Worth. And we used this to go all over the hemisphere. A lot of extraditions that we would use. Probably recognize this is El Chapo, one of the, a huge DEA target that was arrested. But what we would do is DEA would arrest or would have individuals like this that would be arrested in foreign countries, because we don't have arrest authority overseas, but we work very closely with the host nation forces. They make the arrest, and if we have an extradition treaty with them, they'll turn certain targets over to us if they're part of our cases, and then we will fly them back in the Learjet or another one of our jets, fly them back to the district where they're going to face charges. So I was actually on standby to fly El Chapo, and then the government of Mexico made a last minute decision to do it themselves. And so we weren't even aware. I saw on my phone that he was airborne. I thought that was kind of funny because nobody told me. So, but anyways, for some reason, government of Mexico decided to do that one themselves. But typically, we would fly down and pick up the target, and then bring him back to face charges. Many of mine were from Bogota. We have a very robust extradition treaty with Colombia, and so we'd fly into Bogota to receive the defendants. And a lot of them would go up to Southern District of New York. So we would fly from Bogota up to White Plains. Often we would stop to refuel in Guantanamo Bay Naval Base in Cuba, because that wasn't considered, an area that was under the under a particular magistrate, because we have to be very careful when we take custody of them. First place of landing on most of these charges has to be where they're going to face charges. So they have to see a magistrate where they're going to be facing charges. So so we had to make sure that we had aircraft that had the range that could get to wherever they're going to be facing charges. We also have a citation jet that I fly that's a lot like this one. This one has some intelligence collection systems on it that I fly. So we take this all over the hemisphere. One mission that we used this for was, I don't know if you're aware, but a lot of the drug traffickers, in trying to smuggle the drugs into the United States, one of their methods is by using what they call semi-submersibles. So these aren't true submarines, but they have a very, very low profile. They're very, very dangerous too, because they often sink in storms because they're easily swamped with water. But they'll go into these little hidden clandestine coves. And so we're working with the government of Panama. And so we used our aircraft to basically film the entire coastline of the nation of Panama. And then we pass it off to our intel sections so that we can try to determine where what the smuggling routes were. We do have several larger aircraft, but the primary workforce of DEA Aviation is the Cessna 206. Similar, this isn't one of ours, but it's very similar to this type of aircraft. These are great for our surveillance missions because they can stay airborne for a long period of time. They're relatively slow, and so we can follow targets that are driving, or we can do surveillance on fixed targets, whether it be a house or some other location. And they're about next year's pricing. They're about 1.2 million each. And then we modify them, and we put, if you can see on the window here, that's right behind where the pilot sits, we have an observer window, so that typically we'll fly left-hand orbits. So the observer is able to see what the camera is seeing, but also be able to look straight out the window to reacquire the target. We have MX-10 cameras that we mount on the side there, and those are very high resolution. So the aircraft can be at a relatively high altitude at a pretty decent distance. And so the targets never even know that we're there. So that's very important. We have an observer station in the back. And so he's got multiple screens. So he controls the camera, but we can also see street names. And so it's very good for the situational awareness of the agents on the ground. So The observer in the back is talking directly to the agents that are conducting the surveillance in the cars on the ground. So if they lose the target, we can easily reacquire and tell them, well, he turned right on Main Street, 2 blocks up from you. We can see more quickly if there's a threat to the agents, threat to their safety. And so especially if they're doing an arrest warrant, we can circle around and we can see the big picture. If they run, we also try to avoid high-speed chases because those are very dangerous. They're not going to escape from the aircraft. So the agents on the ground in the cars, they can back off a little bit so we don't risk hurting somebody that's an innocent bystander. We can just tell the agents, okay, where the bad guy is, and we can reacquire them. We also have, this is a sheriff's helicopter, but we also have a lot of the Bell 407 helicopters just like this. These are mainly in the larger cities because in a big city, you can't use an aircraft that's going much faster because you'll lose the target often behind larger buildings. So helicopters are very valuable for those. So you can just hover and you'll maintain sight, won't get blocked by the buildings. As you can see, it will have the exact same camera system and then the same observer station in the back. So now I am the chief of training for the whole division. So I oversee all of our flight training, not just for the pilots that have been on with us for a while, but all the new pilots that are coming on. They're all special agents. So we choose our new pilots from the special agent population. The only thing they have to have is their private pilot's license. So they go out and they earn that on their own. And then we'll post vacancies and then they will apply for those vacancies. And then when I get the list of names, I bring them to Fort Worth. And then I fly with every one of them. And then my other instructors, we have several contract instructor pilots that do our primary flight training. They'll fly with them as well. And at the end of the week, we sit around and we do a roundtable and we come to a consensus as to whether we think that the individual will successfully make it through our syllabus, our training program on a normal timeline, which is typically about 5 to 6 months for them to become aircraft commanders in the Cessna 206. And in fact, just today I did a check ride. So we had another trainee that just graduated today. So it's a flight that they'll never forget. I text everybody when we're inbound and they come out and the trainee pulls up and they get out and then they get awarded their DEA pilot wings. So it's a pretty special day. So after that, during the next year, I'm going to send them to several other trainings. One is upset recovery training. So teach them how to recover from spins if they should enter one of those. I also will send them to mountain flying training, which is very important for our agents that are flying especially around the Rockies or even the Appalachian Mountains, because very different characteristics with weather that are associated, extreme turbulence that are associated with the mountains. And then we also send everybody to water survival. This is one of our tactical helicopters. We've got a few of these. These are Bell 412s. These work very closely with our SWAT teams and conduct hoist operations and fast roping and that sort of thing. But if a helicopter has a water landing or crashes into the water, because of the high center of gravity, because the engine's up high, it will flip upside down and then start to sink very fast. And so there's a high likelihood that somebody's going to die if they've not had water survival training like this. So I send all of my pilots up to Groton, Connecticut, to a company that has a simulator. So it simulates a helicopter or an aircraft fuselage. And what it does is it lowers down into the water and then it flips upside down. And then they teach you how to hold your breath and then wait till all motion stops and then find your reference point to release your seatbelt and release the straps and then be able to evacuate from the aircraft. And then I also mentioned we have a tactical medic program that is very robust. This is probably one of my favorite things that I do on any given day. We do we deal with trauma, the types of injuries that we might expect to see. So we have a DEA medical director that we operate under his license. And we operate at an advanced scope of practice because it's a type of injuries that we might expect to see in law enforcement, particularly like gunshots, stabbings, that sort of thing. But we also deal with a lot of medical issues too. So actually, the most things I've dealt with have been people just in my facility that have had some medical issues. That's been mainly what I've used it for so far. And then it's also important to consider everybody in the criminal justice program is probably a little bit younger. So you're not really thinking about retirement at this age. You're just thinking about employment post-college. But this is very important to consider at an early age because The federal government and especially law enforcement is one of the few agencies or organizations that still have pensions based on years of service. And as a special agent, you're under a different retirement program. It's called a 6C retirement for as an 1811. And so your retirement and your pay is much higher than it would be at the same GS pay scale. Because agents basically get paid automatic overtime, which is an additional 25% of your base salary, because you earn it because you're often using your overtime, working all hours of the day. We also have a thrift savings plan, which is the same as an employer 401k, which you'll become familiar with. But the thrift savings plan is it's outstanding, and DEA matches certain percent. Initial 3%, they will match dollar for dollar, and then the extra 2%, it'll be 50 cents on the dollar. Healthcare is another one. Very, very expensive to have good healthcare. Through DEA, they subsidize approximately 75% of our healthcare premiums monthly, and that is something you carry into retirement for the rest of your life. Same with we have a survivor's benefit fund. So if you're married and you were to pass away first, your spouse will continue to receive 50% of your retirement for the rest of his or her life. Then Social Security, of course, is part of the retirement program. And then we also have life insurance programs as well. For the 1811 retirement, it's mandatory at the age of 57, but they are granting some extensions to age 60 if it's a critical skill area like pilot. So I'd be able to go all the way to age 60. But other career positions outside of special agent, they have no age limit. So intelligence research specialists, diversion investigators, program managers, no age limit on those. And we're hiring. And so if this is the type of career you're interested in, typically we don't hire people straight from college. We usually like to see some relevant work experience, but really any type of work experience is valuable. Most of the people that were in my academy class were either former military or former police officers. But I sat right next to a teacher. She just wanted to be part of the fight against just the damage that drugs are doing to the fabric of our nation. And so that was her mission. And we also did have somebody else that was hired directly out of college. So especially depending on what other types of skill sets you have, we're always looking for people with financial backgrounds because every case involves money laundering. And so we need experts in that as well. Is there any questions? I've toughed through it because it's hard because I'm hearing myself in the background. So hopefully it was clear to the audience.
Yes, Sean, thank you so much. You can stop sharing your screen now so we could get a full-on view of you. We've got a couple of really good questions here. Are you still hearing that echo?
Yeah, I'm trying to stop my sharing. Let's see.
I'm going to go to Jillian. I'm going to ask Jillian if she has a fantastic question. And so let me just give her some mic privileges for a second here. And Jillian, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Jillian, if you don't mind, please, you can ask your question live to Agent Lawler. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Telesco, again for having me on, and thank you, Dr. Lawler. Just because I work on the federal level on legislation, and I'm also a retired cop who did narcotics for many years, this is something that's been really interesting to me. So the question that I put in the chat was, as there has been considerable movement at the federal level to deschedule cannabis, don't you think federal scheduling or descheduling, could help regulate the potency level? And right now, because we just had our 38th state pass legalization, and to most of the states, it's produced statistically insignificant increases in crime related to cannabis. Do you think that federal descheduling could reduce illicit markets?
Sean?
I'm still listening.
It's interesting. It's interesting, whatever it is happening on your end, because she ended. She ended.
Yeah, it just finished on my end.
Okay, that's
and it was
really,
hard
really
because
odd.
I was hearing a lot of overlap on that. as I heard she was asking about descheduling and if she thinks that might help with the re-regulation and with the content. And it was really hard to hear the question, but I will say that I think that research is there's potentially some very good medical applications for potentially for marijuana or for CBD and all this. So it has to be researched in the clinical setting in a controlled environment. I think that there will always be a black market, though, and this is what DEA warned, and I think we're seeing that in Colorado and some of these other places. There will always be a black market because they're in it to make money, and even if it's legalized, there will always be alternative sources.
Okay, great. So Ted, you've got two questions that are sort of back to back here, and I'm going to give you your speaking rights here, your microphone privileges. Go ahead, Ted.
Good evening, Dr. Lawler. My question is basically about the agreement that Biden agreed to with Z or Chi, whatever you call them. And I guess they're coming out with some sort of agreement with fentanyl and prohibiting it to be produced. I don't know the details of it. I was wondering what the details were, and if so, what your opinion was on it, if it's really going to impact society. And the reason why I asked that is because I'm also in law enforcement. I work with Broward Sheriff's Office, and I see the effects of fentanyl every day. Actually, I was exposed to it almost a year ago and ended up in the hospital.
So what I heard, what I heard out of that was the details on the agreement between President Xi and President Biden on trying to restrict the fentanyl from coming into the country. I think that this has come up before, and the Chinese government didn't abide by what the agreement was. So I don't know really what the details are. I don't know what the stick will be if if that's not followed. But I don't know. The fentanyl is so easy to get, so easy to make. The transnational organizations are going to continue to ship it because the profit motive is just so high. So I don't know that there's much that the government of China can even do to really restrict that. But I don't know. That's not really my area of expertise.
Yeah. Ted also is asking, how do marijuana companies bank if it's federally illegal?
That I can't really give you a good answer on either. I know that when they first started doing that, there was a lot of consternation. They were worried about if they get involved with that these companies were going to have their assets seized by DEA. So I'm not sure about that. That's another reason why it has to go to the Supreme Court so that everybody knows clearly whether it's going to be illegal or legal.
Exactly.
Now, we'll mention also very briefly
Please.
the edibles as well. The edibles are even higher concentration of THC. And so I've read cases of individuals having psychotic breaks from just having a couple edibles because it's such a potent consumable. So
yeah. And you could walk into any smoke shop. You don't even need a marijuana card to do that. And I'm so glad that you mentioned earlier about, the young brain and, developmentally how dangerous it can be for young people, even under the age of, I want to say even under the age of 20, it's really, really dangerous.
yes.
Alexia, you have your hand up and I gave you talking privileges.
Yes, ma'am. I actually wanted to comment about the whole fentanyl thing, which is going to lead into my question. But with fentanyl, it is everywhere. It does not matter what drug you're getting. I've seen so many people who thought they were just getting cocaine, who thought they were just getting weed, who thought they were just getting, normal Xanax, something like that. And they overdosed. Nobody ever suspected it. So it's crazy because, you see the news, how they found kilos, and they're arresting people for fentanyl and whatnot. But the fact that every day, I think this year, I already know people older, younger than me, doesn't matter, that I've passed about 5 or 6 people. And that's in my small town, in my small area. But the other thing that I wanted to bring up, why is Amazon not regulated? Because if you were to go on Amazon right now, you can get pill pressers, you can get stuff that will make the color of the exact pill How come those are not regulated by the DEA? It is so easily available to get, along with getting fentanyl, because heroin is that you're not getting heroin anymore. It's straight fentanyl, you know? So how is it so easy for drug dealers to be able to clone a drug like, a Xanax or whatnot? How come that is not more regulated? Because I don't think that that's very legal. My stance, like, how can somebody that is not pharmaceutical and not a company, big pharma, how are they able to be able to buy those things so easily on Amazon?
So we're experiencing a delay on
yeah.
Sean's end.
So as I understood it, there was two questions. Why aren't like the pill presses regulated? Because you can buy those through Amazon. And then also the how they changed the chemical structure, I believe. And you can
I think our biggest question was like, how come, literally, she asks, why isn't the DEA regulating?
Yeah, like, why
yeah,
is it
so
so
the
easily available?
regulations really come, we just enforce. And so the FDA is the organization that deals with the regulation of the drugs. Um, so and pill press and paraphernalia, that pill press may be seized as part of a case, but the DEA is not involved at all with regulating those. And plus those might have legitimate uses as well, just like a lot of other things. And I think, and if even if this wasn't part of the question, because it was really hard to hear, one of the things that these organizations will do is they'll try to modify, because when you have a substance that's on the Controlled Substances Act, it's not the name of the drug, it's a chemical formula that's really being regulated or placed on the list. So they will modify it, they will tweak it just slightly, and now it's a different chemical formula, but it has the same effect on the body and the brain. So they can still get high off of it, but now they can say, well, it's not on the list. So that's another thing that we'll do. We have forensic chemists, and we have to identify the chemical structures of these substances that we seize. And if we find some that have been modified, then we'll have to have that placed on the list as well.
So Sean, let me ask you this. Is it easier for you to hear me?
Yes, because there's no delay
right.
with you.
Okay, very good. So I'm sorry, guys. I'm just going to read the questions then to make it easier for Sean. So Mike is one of our PhD students, and he's asking, can you please inform all as to the responsibilities of those agents and employees who are assigned overseas, the long-term effects on families? And I know why Mike is asking this. Mike is a former FBI agent. So that's that he's getting to the heart of mental health of the agents, I think, and the overall like toll that it takes on these agents.
All it takes, yeah, on overseas. Yeah, I mean it's hard to be separated. Now, all of our positions, people can bring their families, and so so you're not separated from your immediate family. You're allowed to bring your spouse and your children. And there's a lot of benefits. We actually have, it's actually very competitive to go overseas in DEA because we have a lot of great locations, and there's often more people applying to go to overseas positions that they can fill. So it's actually, there's a great interest in DEA to go to these locations. They, when you go, the children go to State Department schools, I believe, and you have basically a free housing. And so there's a lot of benefits. You don't have to have a mortgage for a couple of years. You get an armored SUV that you can use for your family. So we all have cars that we use for work, but stateside, I can't put anybody except for another DEA employee in my car. So families cannot use the cars, but overseas, the vehicle is allowed for family use. But it would definitely be much harder if you were there without your family. For example, in Afghanistan, we had a large presence in Afghanistan for many years. That would be very difficult, very dangerous. And I know it's just like in the military, on long deployments, it really takes its toll on families.
Yes. Yeah. So is the armored SUV, is that post Kiki's murder?
Is that what?
Was that post Kiki's murder?
That I don't know, because It probably was, but that I'm not certain.
Okay. Speaking of Kiki, and I know that Kino has his hand up. So, Kino, because of the delay that Sean is experiencing, some kind of like audio and either mic or speaker technical difficulties, would you be able to just type your question and I'll read it for him, if you don't mind? That I think that might be a little bit easier for him. But one of the things I wanted to say is that there's a couple of really excellent docuseries and regular Hollywood-ish, series about Kiki's death. Drug Wars, the Camarena story, and the first season of Narcos Mexico is all dedicated to Kiki's death and actually his work, and then his kidnapping and eventual murder. And then there's another docuseries, The Last Narc, which is also about Kiki's death and his work. So if anybody's interested in that, you really ought to take a look at it. I actually loved Narcos Mexico, the first season, and that was thanks to Dr. Castro, who turned me on to that, and then I was hooked. And so if you want to honor Kiki's life, his work, his all of his struggle, I highly recommend one of those three to watch. Kino, did you do it for me? Great. Okay, so he says, since the passing on the war on drugs and get tough on crime, the drug war in the United States has been viewed as the new Jim Crow law. What is your opinion on that?
I see it as, I've seen what drugs do to families, and I see how they destroy the fabric of society. And DEA doesn't target users, so that's more at the local level. So to the general public, what we try to do is bring awareness. We're trying to tell people about the dangers of drugs and steer them away from it. So we're not going after users at the user level. We're trying to take out the CEO and the COO, the highest levels of the organization. And so that's really what DEA gets involved with.
Okay, I'm going to ask Layla to come on if she doesn't mind. We hit a great many of the guests that are in the webinar. I'd like to now dedicate some time to those on YouTube. So Layla, do you mind coming on and then asking Sean some of those questions? And you get to pick which question you think is the best one, or maybe we could just do two because we're already at 8:03, the top of the hour. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Dr. Sean. One of the questions in the chat was from Angela. She asks, what role does data analysis play in identifying patterns/trends related to the drug trade?
So the data analysis is very important. We have intelligence research specialists that help us with that. It could be something like getting long lists of phone calls that have been made. And so it's just lists of numbers, but then we have to now pair off which phones are calling which other phones. And then we can use that to see who is talking the most to each other. So that identifying those types of patterns are very important. Also financial patterns. When I was in New Jersey, I had access to a particular database through where we would be able to go into and see deposits that were in money transactions that were very questionable. And all this came about after 9/11 with the Patriot Act. That was one of the things that came about because the intent was to prevent terrorist organizations from being able to put money into the banking system electronically. And so that affected all the drug trafficking organizations as well. So they have large amounts of proceeds they're trying to get into the banking system. Now they couldn't do it without being easily discovered. And so what they transitioned to was bulk cash smuggling. And so when I was in New Jersey, we were seizing. What they would do is they would just collect actual cash, and they would have big duffel bags just filled with cash. And then they would try to conceal these in different areas of vehicles called traps. And so they would try to hide the money and then smuggle it back down to Mexico or back to Colombia or wherever the source nation was. But that's a lot harder than doing electronically. And so when we were following our targets, we knew when they would have all this cash, that's when we would make the stop and make the arrest. And then DEA just seizes all this cash. And now the onus is on them to prove it's not drug proceeds, which they can't do because most people don't drive around with $2 million in their car. And so that's really what hurts these organizations, because there's almost an unlimited amount of drugs. You can take drugs off the street. I've heard estimates as high as 80 to 90%. You won't even really affect these organizations. But when you start taking their money, that's when you really impact, because they're businesses. At the end of the day, they're crimes, but these are businesses. So by taking away their financial assets and their proceeds, that's the way we really hurt them. The other good thing is when we would seize this money, when I was on the task force, it would be evenly divided up, and it goes back to each of the local departments that they could use to offset other costs. So they could use it to buy equipment and vehicles and things like this. And then DEA's portion just goes back to general treasury. And the interesting thing about that too is all this cash that we were seizing, we don't even count it. We would you put it in evidence bags, you do everything with multiple people, put in evidence bags, and it's just listed as a large sum of US currency. Because if we count it and we count wrong, then, and the official count is different, now you've got a problem. So we don't even count it. We just put it into these bags. And then we would take it to Brinks. There was a facility that we would go to up in, that Brinks operated in New Jersey. And they have these huge machines where they put all the money in, and it counts it, it collates it, it finds counterfeits, and it spits those out, and it gives you the official count. And then they take all that money and they take it to the incinerator and they burn it. But it's only paper. And so what we get back from that is clean bills. So if we burned $1 million of drug proceeds, we will get $1 million of fresh money electronically, and then that's what gets back into the bank. And so the amount of money stays the same. It's just paper, but you can't put that paper back into circulation because it probably is contaminated with something like fentanyl. So it's very dangerous. So yeah, so all that would just get incinerated, but it's just paper at the end of the day. So
right. So Layla, there's one more question that's really cool from Angela. And she's asking a really good question about encrypted platforms.
Okay. Let me ask that one. It says, how does the DEA handle encrypted platforms when investigating drug-related activities?
Encrypted platforms. So that's a little bit outside of my expertise. We have other parts of DEA that do all of that, but it's not something I do on a daily basis. But we do have experts that are able to handle those. Okay,
great. And Layla is sporting her Alpha Phi Sigma shirt. This is the vice president of our chapter, Omega Tau. And Layla's been doing a phenomenal job with getting our chapter nice and vibrant. And I love the shirt. I love the red. It's awesome, Layla. Thank you. So I'm gonna just read one more. Actually, okay, two more. Just two more, and then we're gonna close for tonight. So it's Alexia is saying, if people are trafficking from a different country and get caught, do they face federal charges and then get deported, or do they have to do their time here and then they get deported?
Usually they're doing their time here. If you're violating US laws and you get caught here, you're going to go to prison here and then get deported after the sentencing.
Okay. So, and then Jillian, last question. Shouldn't the burden be on the government to prove that the money is related to criminality instead of the suspect having to prove it isn't?
Yes. And the burden is on the government. And that's part of all of our case. When we seize the money, that's often later in the case. And so we have very thorough documentation. We have all the evidence that shows. It may be photographic evidence. It's things that we observe. We have electronic evidence. It may be phone calls that were made. So we have all the proof ahead of time when we seize the money. And the only reason I say that is that, we wouldn't just be able to take the money and not give it back if they could say, well, I just took, $20,000 out of my bank account and I'm just taking it home, and that's legal. And that would be easy to prove, even though, but we have evidence before we seize this money. We have evidence. We know it's drug proceeds. We may have, we may have seen them make the transaction. And so we know, but we still give them a receipt. So
I have a question for you. I'm sure you've seen Traffic.
seen what?
Traffic, the movie Traffic.
Yes. Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how close is what's depicted in the movie to reality?
It's dating it a little bit because that was a long time ago. I saw that movie. But from what I remember, most of the elements of Traffic were pretty realistic, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of depiction of Mexico and corruption and
Yes.
And how the government and the police were it was counterproductive to everything
Yes.
that the DEA was doing.
Yes. Yes, and that's always been the case.
Yeah. And that continues to be the case. Am I right?
Continues to be the case. Yes.
Yeah. Sean, wow, this was phenomenal. Layla hit a home run because Layla's the one I think that you came across. I don't know, somehow you came to their attention and then they told me, wow, they were like super impressed with you. And so we finally got you on, and it has been really, really interesting and thorough. And I'd love to have you come back. And
Absolutely.
The next time you come back, I would love to hear about your research.
Absolutely. I would love to talk about that.
To active shooters and how
Yes.
administrators and everybody else can help to either mitigate or prevent.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Actually do a lot of school safety and law enforcement conferences on that. Just got back actually yesterday from New Mexico, teaching school administrators on that, and then going to Vegas the end of the month. But that's really one of the passions of mine.
Yeah.
And then
Well, definitely.
hopefully I'll be able to get the audio figured out, because it's really hard trying to have a conversation when I hear all the background noise.
Yeah, I do really. I don't know why that's happening, but maybe Layla can get with you at some point and to try to
Yes.
figure it out. But it wasn't happening with us.
Yeah, with the three of us, it was totally clear. Yeah.
Right. So I wonder what that was about. But in any
Yeah.
event, Sean, thank you. Be safe. I want to say thank you to all of our students that have joined us. They're, by the way, undergrads, they're masters, they're PhD students. Some of them are from Alpha Phi Sigma, but most of them are from us, from NSU and the School of Criminal Justice. I want to say thank you to our deans, Dean Durham, who is the dean, the executive dean, Dr. Kushner, our associate dean, Dr. Castro, and everybody who works behind the scenes, especially Layla Horton and Justin Campbell, our project managers. So thank you again, everybody. And this will be uploaded to Spotify along with all of the other episodes that we've had. And so if you're driving in your car and you come across some traffic, then you could just put us on your radio, and you could listen to us on the way to work.